Greetings, Shelpers! I'm coming at you with another crafting video. Since it's Easter, pretty much more or less, I thought it would be appropriate to do another card. So, since I got everything figured out for the shaker card, I thought we might as well give it a try. Alright, so first your supplies. You will need a blank greeting card, a cardstock piece that's the same size as the card, scissors, an X-Acto knife or cutting machine are optional, but I have to tell you the cutting machine is going to make your life so much easier when it comes to cutting out the shape in the middle of the card. Clear plastic, like what stickers come in. Double-sided adhesive foam squares. Stuff to decorate the outside of your card, like stickers, die cuts, colored pencils, whatever it is you want to use. And card filling, like sequins, small beads. You can use glitter, but it's not something I would recommend, and I'll tell you why in a bit. So just stick with the sequins or small beads. So after you gather your supplies, first thing you do is you cut a shape into the separate cardstock piece. The cutout needs to have room around all sides because you will need to put those foam adhesive squares all the way around it. So, and yes, you can get foam dots, but the squares are going to help you out because you need to make a small bowl-like or container-like shape eventually. So I would recommend squares for that. But as far as the cutout goes, an oval or square is a great idea for beginners. Don't make it too complicated right now. You can do that later. So then, after you cut that, you cut a square of clear plastic that's bigger than the shape, but not bigger than the cardstock. So glue it to the back. Now, in my picture, you will see that I have what appears to be Elmer's glue. That is very good, Shelpers, because that's what I did. I would say that's a pretty bad idea because my plastic started lifting up from the cardstock, especially when I started working with the foam adhesive squares. So what I would recommend is getting a glue runner or a stronger glue to adhere the plastic to the back of the cardstock. It will save you a lot of heartache later on. Okay, so after you do that, you will put the double-sided adhesive foam squares around the shape as close to the edge as possible, but do not overlap your window, quote-unquote, which is the clear plastic. Try not to leave gaps between the squares, and don't unpeel the backing. Okay, so why you don't want gaps in between the squares, and yes, in my picture, there are gaps, but at least the parts closest to the window don't have them. Because if you have gaps, you are going to leak out your glitter, sequins, beads, whatever it is you're putting in there. And that is something you do not want. Also, when you choose your filling, not only do you have to consider if it's going to leak out if you don't do it as tightly packed as you possibly can, you also have to consider that the things you put into the little well bowl situation that you've created are not higher than your foam squares are thick. Because then it's just going to really press against that plastic. It's not going to move around and shimmer like you want. It's just not a good situation. You don't want to compromise the integrity of your plastic window. Okay, so add a few more squares after you add them around the rest of the cardstock. This will make sure your entire card front will be level. You don't want any like depressions or ramps or anything going on in your card. You want something that is completely level with everything. Okay, so after you manage that, add your sequins or beads to the inside of your shape. Keep them away from the squares. This will be hard to do. Also, please do not overfill the center. You will want to put in a lot of stuff, but the heavier it is, the more you can compromise your plastic. And the more, as you're like picking apart the backing in the next step, the more like beads and stuff you have to worry about popping up. And it just becomes a great big old mess. You want enough shimmer or interest that the card will pop, but not too much that it will be just an absolute bear to deal with. Because when you do the next step, which is peel off the backing from the tops of the squares, you have to do it gently, and I mean very gently. You have to coax those babies. The plastic shouldn't come up, and the sequins and beads shouldn't go all over the place. That is a problem, because if your beads start sticking to the foam squares as the backings come up, you will not, unless you get the beads free and back where they belong, be able to adhere the card to the cardstock, and you will have a breach where everything can just tumble right out. It's very much a pain. What happens when I was doing it was I got quite a few, but what I did was I gently took the tip of my pen. I have a click pen, and I took it and I just gently scraped them off back into the center. That worked fairly well so that I wouldn't actually wear out my glue on the backs of the squares. So you have to line up the blank of the card after every one of your backings is pulled off and everything is filled. You line up the blank of the card. And so it's even. You press the two together. Make sure they're firmly pressed. You have to remember to consider the orientation, meaning if one is landscape, the other is portrait. You don't do cross piece. That would not work out. And definitely where you want your opening. This isn't as big of a deal if your card has the shape directly in the middle, but if you look at my card, you will see the oval, the egg, whatever you want to call it, is more off to the left. So I wanted to make sure that that was the back of the card, and then my lettering would be towards the front. So I had to be very careful. Then you can decorate the inside and outside, and you're done. It doesn't have to be too much decorating on the outside because, honestly, your shaker is going to be like the main event. So all you have to do is just add a little more interest and a little more contrast, and then pretty much Bob's your uncle. So there you have it. That's all you have to do. Parts of it are very frustrating. I understand. Peeling off the backing, making sure your plastic doesn't come up. But if you can, and here's the thing, you can't really troubleshoot. Like, say I put my card together and it's all perfect and pretty, and I picked it up and it starts leaking. This is one of these projects where you can't really troubleshoot too much and fix it. If the plastic is starting to peel away, you can very gently try to add a little more glue underneath between the cardstock and the plastic. But if there's a leak somewhere in all your foam adhesive squares, you're not really going to know how to shore that up, because you will only have the perimeter of the card to work with, and it will be for nothing. So you have to be very gentle and coax this baby. It is definitely not something that's actually idiot proof, as they like to call it. So just make sure you have all your ducks in a row before you put the card and the cardstock together. All right, and there you have it. I think that's all my tips. Please don't use the Elmer's. It didn't work for me. If it works for you, great. Maybe I just didn't leave it sat long enough. Also, Elmer's will, if you smear it, get your card window, the clear plastic, dirty. And if it's dirty and all that, it doesn't look very nice because it's, looks like somebody came all over it. And no one likes that. Well, maybe you do, but not for Easter. So, all right, I think that'll do it. So, take care, Shelpers, and whatever holiday you celebrate or don't celebrate, I hope you have a great one, and I will see you in the next. Bye!